Clubhouse.
Jill, ask them what they think about supervillain.
That sounds better to me. More exciting.
Do you prefer saving America? How about saving the world?
Nope. It's saving America.
Welcome back to Pod Clubhouse's continuing coverage of the fourth season of The Boys. This is for the fourth episode of the fourth season called Wisdom of the Ages. This is Paul's Pod Clubhouse here with a guest host for today's episode, Derek from the Geekdom Fancast. How are you doing today, Derek?
Hey, Paul. So great to be doing our show with you again.
Yeah, I mean, it's been quite a while since we've gotten to co-host together. Let's see, we did some Battle Beyond the movies, and we did some Westworlds.
Yeah, we did. I was so happy to do the Westworld with you. That was so great.
I missed that show, but it's gone. Anyhow, The Boys, episode 4, Wisdom of the Ages. I saw this one break down into 5-ish stories. Why don't we get Homelander's story out of the way?
Oh, yeah. Well, that's definitely the main one for this one.
So why do you suppose he, when he was confronting his fractured psyche in the previous episode, why do you think that the answer was that he needed to go and kill everybody at the lab?
Well, the thing is like, I wonder about because they do the little recap and it says, you need to go home. You need to go home.
Yeah.
I'm actually glad that you asked me to do this because it made me go back and watch the episode again. And, when you watch something a second time, you can pick apart it a little bit more. I don't necessarily think he had a plan to do what ends up happening because he bothered to show up with the little Fudgy the Whale cake. And I'm like, why would he bother to bring a cake if he's just going to kill everybody? Like, that makes no sense. Like, unless he's just really trying to mess with people's heads. I don't think he necessarily knew his intentions until he got there and he saw the people's faces, because he was sitting there and he was playing the wastebasket basketball thing. Mm-hmm. And I forgot the guy's name already. The guy he was playing it with, though. And he's
Marty or Frank. I think it was Frank.
I think it was. Okay. Yeah, I think you are right. And he's sitting there and he's about to throw the third one. And he goes, you know what? Why don't you get in the oven there? And he didn't seem like he knew he was going to. That didn't seem like his plan right away. It just seemed like it came to him, or at least that's the way the actor played it. He didn't seem like he had this thing okay, we're going to play wastebasket and then I'm going to throw him in the oven. He didn't know, because he paused and he's sitting there looking at it and he looks at him and I don't know. I think he was kind of just taking all the emotions in and it was just affecting him, understandably, because of how Homelander is. But I think the way a lot of it played out is just because of how he was overcome with anger and resentment.
I was thinking it was something like, I connect everything to Star Wars, even if it is the sequels in cases.
Fair enough.
How Kylo Ren justifies killing his parents as a way to kind of set himself free, as something that's holding him back is his own history, and the way to free yourself is by killing your own history, right? He makes that argument.
Right.
That felt a little like what he was doing here, Homelander, but I don't know that he had ever felt encumbered by that history, Mm-hmm. So maybe, that feels thematically similar to what they were talking about with Kylo Ren, but functionally not the same, because there was what weight? Was it the weight that they were still alive and had done their job with him? Was that just taking this emotional toll on him still, that he felt like he couldn't move forward from unless he took care of them? Maybe that's where that fractured psyche bit comes in.
Yeah.
Because all that he ever shows us is the sociopath Homelander, that's seeking approval and love and adoration.
Yeah, that whole thing that Barbara brings up in the very end, I thought was so fascinating, because it showed the relationship with his son. It showed the relationship with his quote unquote creators. And I think it was the second season or whatever, or maybe it was last season. His whole thing with,
with Soldier Boy.
Yeah. Remember when he found out that was his quote unquote dad? He tries to link, and then he had that relationship with Aya Cash's character.
Stormfront.
Yeah, Stormfront. So it's there's been so many instances of him latching onto people and trying to have these connections with people. And then, of course, everything just never works out for him for mixture of his own actions and reasons. But I think that scene, or that, just that explanation from Barbara was really a lot, because it explains so much of how and even Elizabeth Shue, going all the way back to season 1. He doesn't enjoy being alone, and he doesn't enjoy feeling alone, and he doesn't enjoy having nobody in his life. He keeps trying to get people in his life, and he just can't seem to make it work, like maybe because of how he was raised or because of his own head or something. But I guess that's a long answer of saying, like, the splinteredness goes with like his desire to have people in his life, but also the splinteredness goes of him not being able to accept it.
My usual co-host and I, Kat, were wondering if this would happen. Like, she kind of predicted that he might lose his shit at some point. Mm-hmm. And here he did. Yep. Do you suppose that this bloodletting was sort of like a venting, like a maintenance need for him, so that he could go back to Vought Tower and continue to act, quote unquote, normal? Or do you think he'll just continue to get less stable? Because this season, his little ticks seem to be on an increase.
Mm-hmm. I agree. No, it's the thing is that I think he needed to. I mean, it's such a cliche thing to say, but I think he needed to destroy his past to move to his future, because he has this past that has shaped him and molded him and made him have so much anger and emotions, and you could, I guess, say mental scarring from, like, he explains all the things they did to him, putting him in the oven and everything and stuff. And like, he was basically a lab rat. And like, as a kid, that probably really warped his mind and really screwed him all up. So now he's a full grown adult and he's got all these supernatural powers, but he's trying to move forward with his life. And now Vought is basically his. Like, it was different when he was quote unquote working for them, but now that Vought is his and he's the man kind of running the show, I think he still, in that moment, in the splintered moment, he had the thing where like he feels he's at this crossroads where like he needs to get rid of everything that's holding him back from when he was a child so he can move forward as an adult. Mm-hmm. I don't know how. I probably have to go back and watch 3 again, but like I'm not sure how he got to that, but it's obvious that like he's not able to let go of his past, so it's holding him back.
I agree. Yeah, I think that's what motivated the trip downstairs there, and I think it'll help maintain a little bit for a while, but I just don't think it's gonna have any long-term effect of keeping him sane.
The only way I think he can quote unquote be cured is if he was to get full acceptance from Ryan, from his son. If they could have because Ryan's still feeling him out and still trying to like accept him as his dad. Homelander wants him to be a soup and take over like he has, and he's like, no, I want to help people. He doesn't hate humans like Homelander does. He doesn't resent humans like Homelander does. And until I think him and Ryan can get on the same level, I don't think he's going to be able to keep his stability. I agree. And also the fact of like, I think it also comes down to he needs a mate. He needs, whether they whether they decide to give him a male or a woman, who knows, the boys could do either one. But I think he needs a partner, because the fact of he can't just be alone, like, and his son is his son, but he needs also an equal. So I think until he finds his own life partner and he gets on a good level with his son, he's never going to be completely stable.
I hadn't really even considered the mate part of it. We know that he's interested in the opposite sex, like he did have
Stormfront. That was so great. That was so fun.
But I hadn't even considered that. We've been shown only this season the relationship with Ryan and how he wants that to evolve. And Ryan, like you say, he's calling him dad, but he's any port in a storm. He killed his own mom accidentally. Butcher spurned him, and Butcher's not really dad material anyway.
As he even says he's not.
He's just not. Not in the full-time sense, maybe in the protect you from bad people sense, but not in the play catch in the yard sense. Yeah. But yeah, I think it's just, this will be like a Band-Aid, and then we'll see him feel the rage again and Yeah, only in the halfway point of the season, and he's killed a room full of people, which makes me wonder, why did he leave Barbara alive?
I think because he felt, I don't want to say he got it all out, but it just seems like, and she even says she was the boss. And, he actually even stopped when she said, hey, put Marty out of his misery. And then he was listening to her. So maybe there's I don't want to say necessarily mother, but maybe a authoritative figure that he still kind of respects her or listens to her or somehow, or, she was saying the whole thing, you seek our approval. So maybe he just felt the need to leave her around for reasons that were not really given but it goes back to his past, that maybe she was a big enough presence in his quote unquote upbringing down there that he was able to let her go.
The programming, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are as harsh of words as I've probably ever heard someone direct toward Homelander without resulting in some kind of conflict. There was the woman from the previous episode that was just saying that she had called Starlight, and he lasered her right through her head, before she even fully admitted to what she was doing. That's how insecure he is, about anyone moving against him. And for her to admit that the way he is was done to him on purpose. Wow.
Yeah. And also, I think that's also part of it is because she kind of illuminated him. She's like, look, Vought brought in these psychologists. You still seek approval. But she gave them this whole diatribe of quote unquote, exposing how he is and why he is like he is. So I think that maybe has part of it too. He's like, well, he's like, all right, this guy's got all the answers. I don't want to say necessarily I can't kill her, but I think he because she awoken everything in him or let the light bulb went off, he just let her go.
All right. I like that.
Because the other two guys, all he did is he brings up these two stories of what they did to him and how they berated him and made him feel, terrible. And he didn't have that story for her, which not to say that maybe she didn't do something, but he didn't have that. So maybe she never directly did anything that scarred him like they did.
I thought it had a little bit of that, leave one to tell the tale to it,
I was thinking of that too, but then at the same time, to tell who? Who would she talk to about it? Unless, another thing I was thinking is maybe he left her because she can make sure the program doesn't do any more harm, or maybe don't let this happen again, or I don't know, maybe it was something a little more like that too. It's like, okay, you need to right this ship and stop messing with kids or stop experimenting on people or whatever.
Yeah, that might be it. Even though he's quote unquote in charge of Vought, he's not really an administrator. So there might...
Yeah, they have probably so much going on that he can't have... all he cares about is the 7. He's not paying attention to all their divisions. I mean, that thing's a skyscraper. They got so much going on.
Yeah. Have you seen Gen V?
Yes. I love that jumping ahead, I love that they showed up in 5.
But there's that whole element of what is happening at Godolkin. I'm sure he's not keenly aware of it all.
They're doing a really good job so far of kind of melding the two universes. They're doing it very subtly, but they're finding ways to cross them over.
They did a good job of making Gen V feel like the boys, like just another section of the same world,
just the teenage version.
Well, I don't know,
young adult.
Did you ever watch Caprica, the spinoff from
Battlestar
Galactica?
I did not.
It didn't feel like Battlestar at all.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it took place in the same universe, and it had one of the same executive producers, but not the right one, apparently, because it took place a lot in cyberspace, and it just didn't feel the same. It's a decent watch, but it doesn't feel like Battlestar Galactica. And that's a failing of trying to make a cohesive universe for the viewers.
Well, I'm sure we could have 1,000 examples, but a good example, of course, of how it does work is Better Call Saul was a wonderful example of a spinoff of Breaking Bad.
It's important to keeping things nice and even, and they have that success with Gen V. All right, let's move to Billy Butcher's storyline.
Oh boy, he's got problems.
He is having problems. So this worm thing, I watched this episode with Caroline, and it reminded her of a caterpillar in a cocoon. And that seemed to make a lot of sense given how things end up in Firecracker's trailer. So what do you think is happening? I have my theory about what I think is happening, but what do you think is happening with his tumor, his worm thing, whatever?
One thing that they revealed in this episode that I think was a helpful thing for the viewer of his condition is he brings up how he took some of Frenchie's drug a couple months ago. And he's like, that didn't help me. But it's like, okay, well, if you took more and you were already in a bad state, so that's probably accelerating not only, like he said, his death date, but it's accelerating what's happening to him. So like he's probably mutating or metamorphosizing or, you know, something's, if you're taking more of the drug, it's going to change your body more. So whatever this worm or whatever's in him, that probably fed it more, and it's probably, you know, changing his body more.
I think it is changing his body. I mean, whatever happened to the stretchy guy at the end, Billy did it to him.
Yeah.
He doesn't remember it, sort of like how Soldier Boy had those blackouts last season. And disastrous stuff happened afterwards, you know? And Billy's powers that he figured out how to use anyway were like the strength and toughness and the laser eyes. I don't know that he figured out anything else.
No, but it's that whole thing of like, I mean, this is going to anything with like X-Men or anything with kids with powers when they're in any comic book is like this stuff all happens when their adrenaline pumps and their bodies just react. So it's like, I don't think he consciously came up with anything. His body just reacted to the dire situation it was in.
I think he's going to, and I've mentioned this in previous podcasts, I think he's going to get very close to death. He may even die.
Yeah.
Like get very sick and all that. But then whatever's happening under the skin is going to finish happening. And I don't think he's dying. I think he's coming back as whatever will be needed to counter Homelander. Because I think that's what this whole thing's building up to.
Oh, so do you think maybe, because I haven't read the comics, so I'm completely oblivious to what could be happening. Just for the listeners, I'm putting that out there now. I have no idea how this, I've been making a point to not read the books because I want to see how this plays out first. So you're saying, do you think that Billy Butcher, quote unquote, will die and then Billy Butcher 2.0 is going to arise?
Something like that. Yeah.
Okay.
And I think I don't think it's going to be like, I have his memories. No, I think it's going to be like Billy Butcher, but it's going to be powered. Like he's the only character that really has the biggest personal beef with Homelander to make a very satisfying counter to him in whatever this is all building up to. It's got to be Homelander's takedown. The world can't continue to live under this psychopath's thumb.
And the problem is he keeps getting bigger, though, and more powerful.
Obviously, Ryan is going to play some kind of role in this whole thing to complicate things, you know, because Ryan has those powers, but he's still young and undeveloped. Whereas Billy's older and he just has the rage and the badassery.
Well, I think he has the vengeance from his lady dying. I think that's a lot of it.
Yes. Well, and you know, the whole raping her and then all that.
I think if, you know, obviously that's a huge chunk, but if for some reason you were to erase his relationship with that character and everything that happened to her and her relationship with Homelander, if you were to take all that out, he would just be a guy trying to take a bad guy down. That's all he'd be.
Yeah, and that's less exciting.
Yeah.
So a couple episodes ago, Butcher asked Mother's Milk for help with Ryan and was shut down. That's when he went to Kessler and got the tranquilizers and decided, well, maybe Kessler's plan kind of sucks too. So he asks again for help with Ryan in a display of what looks like genuine human emotion. Why do you suppose he asked again?
Well, I mean, part of it is, of course, because he's dying. But I think it's funny that he says, you know, you're the best dad I know. And I'm thinking, who other dads do you even know?
Right.
You probably don't know any other dads. I think it's like, you know, he's like, oh, that's the nicest thing you could have said to me or whatever. It's like, and, you know, he is a good dad, but it's just funny that I just found that ironic that it would have been funny for him to call him out and be like, you don't know any other dads. I'm the only guy on your list.
That's funny. Yeah.
But I think it's one of those things that like he's recognizing that the clock is ticking and there's a good chance that he's not going to have time to take out Homelander before rescuing Ryan. So he's trying to do what he can to make his goal happen, or his promise that he made to
Becca,
Brian's mom, that he would take care of her. So he's trying to pass that on to Mother's Milk because he can tell that there's a good chance he's not going to be able to fulfill it. And
he's the best shot because he has some idea of how to raise kids.
He's always put his family at the top of his list throughout the show.
Out of the guys that we does know, Huey's a single guy. Frenchie is
A mess.
he's even less father material than Butcher,
Yes.
if that's possible.
I can almost see Frenchie dying before Butcher.
Yeah. Yeah, well, he's got a lot of enemies.
Well, no, just the narcotics.
That's yeah, I did wonder about that actually. That was a question that came up with Kat last episode, was his drug intake is up. And this doesn't seem like the kind of show where they have overdoses and trips to the ER and blah blah blah, but realistically it could, because he's using he's always used drugs, but he seems to be using them quite a bit more now.
Well, yeah, the thing is he's on this big downward spiral because of Colin, and plus everything that's going on around him now. And him and Kimiko don't really have the bond that they had before, so he's kind of on his own. So he doesn't have anyone reeling him in or looking out for him. So he's just going down the sewer by himself.
I didn't think that no one else was looking out for him, but that's true. Butcher brought him in because of his skill set, but not because he needed to big brother him into acting right.
Mm-hmm.
He was kind of left to do whatever he felt like he needed to do for himself.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Let's shoot over to Huey.
Oh, man. Poor guy.
Earlier this season, Kat had asked me if I'd give my own kids Compound V. and I said situationally, in that universe, and if I was another soup, then probably 51% yes. I probably would, under the same logic that Victoria Neuman did for her kid, even though her kid got like a pretty weird power.
Mm-hmm.
Now Huey wants to give it to his dad. So would you, Derek, give V to a dying loved one to try to help them out?
If we take it that I'm Huey and he knows what he went through, how it almost killed him, the bleeding out his ears, and he knows how much it messed up his health, and then he sees what's happened to Butcher and how it's messing up his health, knowing what it does to you, I wouldn't. It's like Kimiko said, it's like, you just got to let him die. She's like, maybe you're supposed to just let him go. It's like, yeah, maybe it would rescue your loved one for a bit, but it's not going to make them. There's been no evidence, at least in this show or in what they're showing, that it's going to make them 100% hunky-dory. Like, it seems that you're going to have side effects no matter what.
There don't seem to be that many happy soups.
Well, I'm just saying, but like, what human on this show has taken it and been like, great? It's like, no, it's like, it doesn't seem to work out for any of them.
Well, and you don't get to pick your power,
Yeah.
What if Dad turns out to be Love Sausage Part 2, and you did that to him? So speaking of that scene, what do you think happened? I mean, Huey leaves before he gives Dad the V. He comes back and the blue stuff is in the IV. Mom was left in the room alone. What do you think happened?
Either she somehow got her hands on it herself, or someone else had to have gone in there at some point and put it in there. But like, obviously there's no way Huey did it, because he literally walks out of the room and everything and stuff. So
Kat has this theory that there's more to Mom than meets the eye.
yeah, exactly. I mean, she was the only one in the room, so my bet, of course, is with her that somehow she got it on her own. I don't know how, but somehow she acquired the Compound V on her own, and she decided to take matters into her own hands.
I'm relatively gullible when it comes to these sorts of things. So when Mom comes back and says that she had the worst case of postpartum depression in history and decides that she'd rather survive and leave than stay and die, I took her at her word. But Kat was suspicious of the whole thing.
Oh, really? See, I'm with you. Yeah, I figured she was telling the truth. The thing that I don't believe is the fact that, like, he's probably, 25, 30 years old now.
Yeah.
And the fact that she, like, I forget, like, didn't he say something like, oh, why didn't you ever call, or why didn't you ever try to get, and she's like, oh, I tried, and your dad told me not to, or I forget how it goes. But it's like, I don't buy any of that. It's like, she could have put more effort in. It's like, when he becomes an adult, you could have found him and said, like, reached out to him and said, okay, I'm your mom and all this stuff when he's an adult. When he was a kid, I get it. Like, you don't want to mess with the kid's upbringing. You've already established you're a crappy parent, so she stayed away. But once he's an adult, she doesn't have much of an excuse to not insert herself into his life, other than fear. Obviously, it can't be easy for a parent to abandon their child and then come back. But I'm with Kat in the sense of like, yeah, there's something doesn't seem right why she stayed away for so long.
Well, maybe I'll learn more when I watch episode 5.
But we could all be wrong on this. She could just be totally on the level. Who knows?
Or maybe she's got some sleight of hand and pulled it out of his pocket, but she would have to know that it was there. Stay tuned on that one. So not all season, but for the last 3 episodes, A-Train's situation has been evolving with his relationship with the boys, with Huey and Starlight, and in a show where it seems like a small chance that anyone should ever redeem themselves in kind of like the classic sense, A-Train seems like he might be on that path.
Well, I think everything has to do with, what was that, his brother that got in the wheelchair? Yes. Or was that just his friend?
Brother.
It was his brother. I think that had everything to do with his life changing, because that was his family, and look what it caused him. And look how, and now his brother has massive resentment for him, and they don't get along, and, you know, he can't even see his nephews and all this stuff. And like, it had to be a big moment to change his life trajectory. And I think that's what they did.
So where do you suppose Huey and A-Train stand now? Is it as simple as a handshake and we're all good now?
Yeah. I think the sentence that had to be said that was said was Huey was like, yeah, I was going to go tell you to fuck yourself, but forget it. We're good now. And if that sentence hadn't been said there, then maybe I wouldn't have believed it. But because they inserted that in there, I don't think Huey necessarily trusts A-Train. And I don't think they're going to be hanging out at the bar having drinks or anything. But I think in the sense of like taking this all the way back to episode 1, they're done with that.
I hope so.
Can I just say that because I was waiting, I knew hopefully eventually we were going to get to A-Train. I know it's hard for a show to keep with, especially a show with so many characters, to keep everything interesting. But A-Train and the Deep have just gotten to be like kind of the most boring subplot characters now. Like, it's almost like they don't know what to do with them. Like, they don't really have a lot to do, and when they show up, they don't really do much. I'm not saying they need to die or anything necessarily, but it's just like, I wish they would find better storylines for them.
Deep seems to be pure comic relief. And A-Train, I think, is with this redemptive possibility, just that one maybe glimmer of hope in the pretty dark show for a character that took a low swing in his life, starts basically on that low swing, and then spends the whole show kind of climbing back to some sense of being able to live with himself.
Yeah.
I hope that's A-Train's story anyway.
Yeah, the whole thing where he gave up the flash drive and now he's doing the thing at the Compound V, and like, they're starting to do all, and he had that one talk with Mother's Milk where, he said like, he's like, I'm not going to help you. And he's like, come on. He's like, you came for a reason and stuff. So it's like, they're inching him towards having a redemption storyline, and that's fine if that's what this ends up being. But it's just like, I'm just saying in the sense of like, it's a slow crawl, and I get it, it kind of has to be, but I just hope by the end of the season they do something more with this character than has been done. Because, I mean, the guy gets like, 10, 15 minutes of screen time an episode, and it ain't much.
All right, let's move over to Annie/Starlight.
Oh, boy.
So she has a big secret blabbed on national television, and then she proceeds to beat the shit out of Firecracker. Like, I don't even know that Firecracker qualifies as a full-blown soup,
She's like an adult version of Jubilee from the X-Men.
Yeah, kind of. Like, yeah, that's pretty close. But she was clearly brought there by Sage for this moment of destroying Starlight and potentially the Starlighter movement. But were you Annie, or Annie was, say, your loved one, do you view her response of beating Firecracker up as warranted?
I knew it was what she was going to do in the scene, and I knew that's what was going to happen because you could tell the look in her eyes, and it was going to push her too far, and she was already in a bad place. And, Mother's Milk tried to stop her from going. Not much he could do, of course. He's just like, wait, oh, there she goes. I would have encouraged her to beat her ass, but not on camera. The problem is she did it in a public forum with the whole world watching. That's the problem.
That's a big problem.
And it's not like any of these soups have great restraint and control. But it's like one of those that like she should have just waited till the broadcast was over and then just met her in her trailer and whooped her ass, and then it would have been all great and she still would have got her vengeance out. But the problem is how she did it. And then look what happens. She has the fallout with the presidential nominee, you know, the guy that
he's the president-elect.
Oh, is he?
Yeah.
Oh, whoops. My bad.
Yeah. Yep. He's a big deal.
Everyone's like, are you even watching the show?
It's a nuance.
Well, because he's not even in the White House ever, though.
Not yet, no, because he's making plans and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But,
anyways,
yeah.
Point being, but like, you know, the fallout from it is so bad that she should have recognized that even though what Firecracker did was reprehensible, the fact of how you respond to that is what wins. And like exactly what happened with Firecracker is what Butcher tries to do to her. And look how she does it. She embraces it and she tries to tell people first and get in front of it and say like, oh, I made a mistake, you know, feel sorry for me and stuff. And Annie does, instead of doing the same thing, like I made a mistake and apologize, she goes and just attacks Firecracker. And see, they both handled things differently. And unfortunately, Annie probably did the worst way of going about it. But going to your question, yes, I would have tried to stop her and told her not do this, but you know, at the same time probably would have recognized she ain't gonna listen to me.
And this is the super world. This isn't our world.
Well, it's just like I'm placing myself as Huey, who's just a human, and she's a soup, and it's like, what are you gonna do? You can't hold her back.
That wouldn't have been possible. She's much stronger than Huey.
Yeah, I mean, I as a viewer, of course, I loved watching Firecracker get her ass whooped, but at the same time, I knew as much. It's one of those things that you're seeing it play out twofold. You're like, well, this is fun that she's getting her ass whooped, but at the same time, you know that there's cameras rolling, and I'm like, this is not going to go good. And then, sure enough, you know, 30 seconds later, Mother's Milk comes in and goes, Annie, and he points to the cameras. He's like, come on, and he's just like, oh, here we go. It's like, this is bad.
So, what do you suppose happens with Annie and Starlight House now that, like, the president-elect says, Republicans, as he says it, aren't going to line up behind her for having this abortion out in the open forum now? So yeah, is it like sinking into depression? Is it well, the Starlight House itself might need to exist, but maybe not Annie's association with it. How do you suppose we proceed with this character and her movement now?
I mean, that's really tough because the whole thing she is about, you know, saving children and being on the lookout for kids. Even though she took matters into her own hand, had an abortion, it was a legal thing that she did. You know, in this show and in this world, it's still it seems like it's still a legal matter that she was able to do. So it's not like she did it in secret and in hiding from the law, but it's just, it's going to be looked down upon. She's going to lose support because the whole thing she's supposed to be about the kids. The problem I see is how it might affect, as much as whatever supporters she had, I'm sure not all of them are going to be for pro-abortion and stuff. So like, I don't think she'll lose all her support, but the problem is how, you know, you had the Homelanders versus the Starlighters. Now it's going to be like probably 3/4 Homelanders and 1/4 Starlighters instead of half and half.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I think her group's going to be a very dwindled minority now, and she's still going to have supporters, of course. I don't see why she should lose all of them, but there are probably some people that are going to really, well, two things: sour on her vengeance on versus Firecracker, the violence, and then sour on the abortion. So that's two ways that you can lose people.
It might be down to like 25% because there's going to be the people that don't have a problem with her having had an abortion. Then you still have to divide that by the people that are okay with her beating up somebody else. Mm-hmm. I mean, she is a superhero. That is what they do. That is their bread and butter. They're supposed to beat up people.
But they're supposed to beat up villains doing bad things. Right. And Firecracker was just voicing her opinion. Granted, you know, showing your medical record is not an admirable thing to do. No. She wasn't breaking a law or anything. I mean, well, I guess maybe she was. I don't know. I don't think you can show medical records. Anyways, but the point is, if anything, it wasn't pummeled kind of an offense.
It wasn't a beatable offense, yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't a pound her into the ground offense.
So do you suppose the Seven still need Firecracker at this point?
Oh, yeah. Because the thing is she's almost like their mouthpiece, because Homelander's, you know, the leader and everyone already respects him and stuff. But he's kind of like gotten to the point where he's just like doing his own thing. And he's just like a figure piece. It almost seems like he's still speaking out somewhat, but he seems to be letting Sage run the show and Firecracker speak her mind and stuff. And like, what was it? A-Train's got his movie, and Black Noir's out there doing whatever the hell that guy's doing.
Talking too
But
much.
yeah, what's my motivation? But if you take Firecracker away, the Seven doesn't really have a voice anymore.
To an extent, Stormfront had done some of that because she came in with all that social media expertise. And then
Which in a strange world, just because of the way they did the casting, I would have loved a way that they could have found Stormfront and Firecracker sisters if you look at it. Because they look so alike. And they both have the same kind of ideology.
It's dangerous, touchy stuff, those firebrands like that.
Yeah. Because Stormfront was at season 2?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, she's way in the past at this point.
Yeah. Well, we got one more storyline to cover, and that is the comedic storyline between Sage and the Deep. What do you suppose is going on there? And why do you suppose Sage shits on him in front of people, but then asks him for help with her temporary lobotomy later? And why does it have to be him?
I think because he's weak. I think because she can control him so easily. And if you think about it, she's in this group with the Seven, and, well, she's not hooking up with Homelander, and she's definitely not hooking up with Noir because he's a weirdo. And her and A-Train don't seem to get along very well. So there's, they have a lot of
Some history.
Well, it's just like you can tell, like, she doesn't trust A-Train. A-Train doesn't seem to like her. Like, they don't even barely talk. So, like, Deep's like the only one that's kind of like tried to like worm his way into her or tried to show her any kind of, I don't want to say emotion. He's tried to like bring her in, I guess, more, make part of the team more kind of thing, the whole camaraderie thing. Almost like he's just there. Like, I think it's almost like, well, I got to get it with somebody. And it's like, yep, this guy will do. And he's a dumbass, so I can do, use him how I want and get whatever I want out of him and stuff. So, I think that's part of it.
There was something about their pairing that reminded me of like Rick and Morty. Something about the Morty waves that Deep puts off.
I like it.
That drew her to him in a way that maybe even she can't quite figure out. And she's pretty good at explaining things, or whatever it was she said, whatever the quote was. Still, though, the concept of the, what do they call the interocular style lobotomy within the hands of a boob is is scary. That's a tough way to do it.
It's crazy because, like, she does it, I think, in episode 3? And then she has him do it again in this one. And I'm like, how often does this girl need to do this?
Maybe there's a cost to being the smartest person on the planet. Or maybe if she doesn't cause some bit of brain trauma, maybe there's some consequence to this constantly regenerating brain. Maybe if it's not repairing itself, maybe it's growing. Like Brainiac from Superman villains. Maybe she'll wind up like that if she doesn't.
She has a big dome on her head.
Yeah, take care of herself.
I don't think her character is not interesting for the show, and I like the reason they're using her in the sense for Homelander, because Homelander's not smart enough to come up with a plan. Like, he's a smart guy, but he's not. He doesn't know how to take over the world or like take over a corporation or like. He's not methodical. He's like brute force, So I like that why they brought her in, but I just hate that they made her part of the Seven. She's not a superhero. She can't do anything.
No, yeah. Not even any like psychic control or anything like that. She's just
like, yeah, anyone could probably come up and whoop her ass. Like, Frenchie could probably beat her ass. Like, it's like, I don't like that they made her part of the quote unquote team because she can't do anything. She just stands there. And
they still have open seats. It's not even fully 7 yet, and they fill one with someone without any offensive output.
It's like this whole thing how they keep having her walk around in like the superhero outfit. It just bugs me now, and I'm just like, you're not a superhero. I don't care how smart you are. Someone could just walk up and blow her head off with a shotgun, and she'd be gone.
Well, the brain might regenerate, but the face might be a mess.
Well, that's true. So, anyways, that's my take on her.
Well, that's pretty much all I had to cover on episode 4, Derek.
Okay.
Have you been enjoying the season so far?
Oh, God, yes. This and Invincible are my 2 favorite shows on television right now. I think they're both doing such great world building. There's so many storylines, so many characters, so much going on in both shows. I'm all about cramming as much imagination into a show as possible, and that's what this show is doing.
I like the Marvel shows to an extent, most of them, not all of them. Like, I really enjoyed the second season of Loki. It had a very satisfying ending for me. Then they've had some misses, you know, like She-Hulk or something like that. But there's always a sense of restraint with those. And there is no restraint in either of the two shows you mentioned. And that feels refreshing because it's like you're seeing a story that doesn't have like a leash on it. Like you can go this far and no further. That doesn't seem to be... It doesn't seem to exist for these two shows. Part of our podcast is not to explore the political ideology that kind of feeds into the underpinnings of this show. I know that they're there. I'm not blind to it. I just don't.
I'm sure everyone's aware they're there.
I just don't want to talk about it. I'd rather talk about the actual show. And you don't really get so much of that in the Marvel stuff. But I mean, I enjoy the Marvel stuff. Don't get me wrong. It's just these feel maybe truer to our world in a way.
The Marvel thing is the superheroes and the DC shows too, just for the sake of argument. And the fact of the boys is the underbelly and the behind the scenes. And, you know, that's the thing I think that has made people embrace this show so much is that we've never had the behind the scenes of superheroes. We've always just gotten on the surface of what they do. They fight crime, they take everyone out, blah, blah, blah. And now we're getting what could be really going on with the life of a superhero. And it's interesting.
Right. Like, and on Super Friends back in the day, we only saw them meet at the Hall of Justice. We didn't see what happened when they left the table.
Exactly.
For the people that didn't fly off to save the world. What were the other guys doing there?
You know, the Wonder Twins were getting in trouble at the club. No.
Right, exactly.
They were of age. They were going to the club. They were getting crazy at night.
And that monkey to take care of. I mean,
exactly.
It's the whole thing. All right. Well, Derek, thanks for filling in for Kat on this one. I really appreciate it.
I am so happy to do it. Thank you so much, Paul.
If you can fill in the future, that would be excellent also. We have other episodes of this coming up and other shows to look forward to. So if you're willing, we're happy to have you stay on the roster.
Oh, I mean, you know, that's the foundation of you and I getting along so well is we both have a massive love for the small box. So, you know, you won't have to twist my arm to get me to come back.
I'm glad to hear it. Well, thanks a lot, Derek.
Yeah, Paul.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please remember to rate, review, and subscribe to it on iTunes or Spotify or Amazon or wherever you found it. Please leave a rating and a comment. But if you have a question for me or even for Derek, you can find us on podclubhouse.com. You can pretty much leave a comment on any post whatsoever and we will get it. If it's for me, I'll answer it. If it's for Derek, I'll ask him and he'll tell me what to say. So thanks a lot.
Thank you for listening. This has been an original Pod Clubhouse production. Pod Clubhouse is a podcast network dedicated to encouraging collaboration among podcasters and friends to bring a fresh voice and diverse perspective on a wide array of content. Please visit and leave a comment for us at podclubhouse.com. Rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast feeds on Apple Podcasts. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. You can find us at Pod Clubhouse. Our DMs are always open, and we'd love to hear from you.
Pod Clubhouse.